Following the Second World War, the hunt was on to find the worst war criminals of the conflict. The Nazis across the territory they had gained rained down with terror on the civilians who lived through the occupation. Many of the civilians had seen their ways of life changed forever, their families split up, and there were huge casualties within civilian populations. The focus after the war was ensuring those in the Third Reich were brought to justice for their crimes, in particular those who had participated in genocide and mass extermination of minorities such as the Jews. One man who was eventually brought to justice for his brutal suppression of the Warsaw Ghetto uprising was Jürgen Stroop. Join us today as we look at the justified execution of Jürgen Stroop, the Butcher of Warsaw, and remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. Josef Stroop, as he was known before he changed his name, was born on the 26th of September 1895, with his father being the local chief of police. After the war, he revealed how his mother was devoutly Roman Catholic and how she subjected him to physical abuse as a child. He was raised in a house in which supported the monarchy, and in 1914, Stroop began a career as a soldier in the Prussian army, serving on the Western Front. During World War I, he did see action, being wounded, and following the conflict he married a woman whose father was a Protestant minister. This caused chaos for his mother, who shared her discontent, but Katharina Stroop remained a loyal wife, despite her husband's later actions. Jürgen, or Josef Stroop, joined various nationalistic groups throughout the 1920s, and with Hitler's rise to power, he turned his affections to the Nazi Party. He officially joined the Nazis and the SS in 1932, and later was appointed the leader of the auxiliary police. Shortly after, he rose up the ranks of the SS and began working in the administration of the organisation in Hamburg. Stroop was initially tasked with dealing with dissidents against the Nazi regime, and he was forced to hold a meeting with Bishop Clemens Graf von Galen, who spoke out against the Nazi ideology and criticised their beliefs. Upon the visit, it was rather successful, but von Galen maintained his stance, but pledged his loyalty to Germany. Jürgen Stroop rose further within the SS, and as the Second World War broke out, he transitioned into a more military role. After the invasion of Poland, Stroop worked as a commander of an SS section, and during the occupation of Poland, he travelled to Poznan to act as an overseer of the Selbstschutz, a group of ethnic Germans who were tasked with carrying out brutal acts against the Polish population. They would also perform sabotage operations to help the Germans attack the Polish way of life and the state. It was around 1941 where Stroop changed his name from Josef to Jürgen, and this was done to honour a son who had died in infancy. As Adolf Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, he saw action on the Eastern Front in the notorious Death Heads division of the SS, who were the perpetrators of so many war crimes and massacres during World War II. Further promotions came, and Stroop even rose to the role of an inspector of a forced labour project and a police leader for part of southern Russia, which had been taken by the Nazis. His most famous action came during the Warsaw Ghetto uprising, however. The largest ghetto in Poland was the Warsaw one, which collected around 400,000 people in a rather densely populated part of the city. The conditions within the ghetto were horrific, with thousands of Jews dying due to disease and starvation, which was causing chaos. Dozens were dying each day, even before the mass deportations occurred, which saw Jews transported from the ghetto to Treblinka to be killed. These deportations were performed under the codename Gross Action Warschau between the 23rd of July and the 21st of September 1942. The leaders of the Ghetto Council had been informed that 7,000 people a day were to be deported and sent to their deaths, and as expected, there was a huge amount of resistance within the ghetto. Stroop was sent in to suppress the resistance of the Warsaw Ghetto uprising, and it was estimated that his brutality caused the deaths of over 50,000 people. He was sent to Warsaw on the 17th of April 1943 by Heinrich Himmler, as the previous leader had failed to deal with the uprising effectively by the standards of the evil SS leader. Stroop later said, "I had 2 battalions of Waffen SS, 100 army men, units of order police, and 75 to 100 security police people. The security police had been active in the Warsaw Ghetto for some time, and during this programme it was their function to accompany SS units in groups of 6 or 8 as guides and experts in ghetto matters. Stroop's reign of terror on the Warsaw Ghetto ultimately led to him trying to systematically burn down and blow up every building in the ghetto one by one. Any survivors were either forced to be taken to extermination camps, or simply men, women and children were shot on the spot by the SS. He aimed to destroy and bring complete devastation to the ghetto, brutally putting down the resistance and simply liquidating it. Later after the conflict, Stroop told of his actions whilst imprisoned, and he went into immense detail about his activities and pride in liquidating the ghetto of Warsaw. He published a detailed report of his acts. For example, on the 1st of May 1943 he wrote, "Start 0900 hours. 10 searching parties were detailed to comb out a certain block of buildings, with the added instruction to burn that block down. This block there existed an armaments factory which had not yet been evacuated. It was not exempt from this operation. Today's operation, a total of 1,026 Jews were caught, of whom 245 were killed either in battle or whilst resisting. Moreover, a considerable number of bandits and ringleaders were also caught. In one case, a Jew fired 3 shots against a police officer." Stroop would then go into further detail about this one incident, saying, "A young Jew in his mid-20s was firing a pistol at one of our officers. 1, 2, 3, fast as lightning. My men sprayed the Jew with fire. I managed to whip out my own pistol and hit him as he fell. As he lay dying, I stood over him, watching his life ebb away." Stroop then took on the role of the SS and police leader of Warsaw, and he produced a detailed report on the suppression of the ghetto. He detailed the capture or killing of over 57,000 inmates of the ghetto, and the deaths of 17 Nazi SS soldiers. This was a source of pride for him, but he was then transferred to Greece to help maintain order there. As the war waged on, he stayed and remained loyal to Hitler, to the point that no subject made him more angry than resistance against the Führer, and in particular the July 20th plot. Stroop's support of Hitler was clear, and he took an ardent Nazi stand against those Germans who could be considered anti-Hitler. For example, he was incredibly angry once he learned that Rommel had been allowed to take his own life, rather than to be publicly executed. More examples of brutality emerged about Stroop, as he took part in the execution of 9 United States Air Force airmen who were shot down. Allegedly, the 9 men were killed by Stroop's soldiers, and he showed no remorse for this, regarding the men as enemy terrorists, defying the Geneva Convention. As the Second World War came to an end, Jürgen Stroop was forced to retreat as the US Army crossed the Rhine. He arrived in Bavaria, where he was told that Heinrich Himmler wanted to see him, and the two met on Himmler's personal train. Stroop then travelled to a rumoured Alpine fortress with a group of Hitler Youth soldiers he was training to fight. Stroop had been given signed orders from Himmler, and once there he tried to raise supplies to create a last bastion for the Third Reich. Stroop, however, then decided to surrender to the Allies, as the mission looked ominous, and he surrendered on the 10th of May 1945. On his person was a cyanide capsule, which he did not consume as he was too scared to do so. He was also found with forged identity papers, however after 2 months he admitted who he truly was. Jürgen Stroop was then placed on trial by the US military for the deaths of the 9 prisoners of war executed under his jurisdiction. He was referred to as a cunning devil during his trial, and it was said he behaved poorly in the dock, acting as innocent as a lamb, pretending the killings were new to him. Along with other defendants, Jürgen Stroop was sentenced to death for the murder of 9 US airmen. Whilst he was in prison awaiting trial, Stroop spent a long time with Kazimierz Moczarski, who heard about Stroop's life and crimes. Moczarski was approached by the Polish resistance to even assassinate Stroop inside his cell, but Stroop was ultimately sentenced to death, to be hanged, but in the meantime he had been handed over to the Polish, and he was extradited there to stand trial again for crimes against the Polish people. On the 18th of July 1951, he was placed on trial in Warsaw accused of 4 crimes, belonging to the SS, liquidating the Warsaw Ghetto, leading to the deaths of more than 50,000 and deporting hundreds of thousands to the death camps, ordering the shootings of 100 Poles and participating in mass murder. In Poland he showed a complete lack of remorse for his crimes, and he was sentenced to death yet again, and it would be the Polish who carried out his death sentence. On the 6th of March 1952, almost 7 years after the Second World War had ended, Jürgen Stroop was taken out of his cell at Mokotów prison at 7 o'clock to the execution chamber for his death. It was said that he was calm and exhibiting his usual arrogance before his hanging. As he was led to the gallows, he was asked for any final words, and he expressed none. In his final days, he did not feel any guilt about his actions massacring Jews, and he did not reconcile anything. The executioner led him onto a step and then placed a noose around his neck. The step was then kicked out from underneath him, and Jürgen Stroop was executed for his horrific crimes against the Polish people and many more. Jürgen Stroop was a power-hungry beast who was a strict and ardent Nazi. He was a man who saw nothing wrong with the crimes he was committing in Warsaw and across Nazi-occupied territory. This made him incredibly dangerous, and even to the end he was incredibly arrogant and defiant. He was a man who certainly deserved his executions for the crimes he committed during World War II. His execution for the survivors of the Warsaw Ghetto was a relief. The fact the man who inflicted so much suffering was not walking on the earth acted as a solace for some. Once again, thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.